And introductions will be easy because it's just me. My name is Brian Grossman. I'm editor-in-chief of the Colorado Springs Independent and the Colorado Springs Business Journal. The editorial board that oversees all our publications will be making the endorsement picks, so they'll get to watch the video too and catch up since they're not here. But I figure you could start by introducing yourself, tell us where you're from and why you're running for city council.
Sure. Matt Zelenok, candidate for city council in District 5. I grew up in Colorado Springs. My parents located me here when I was about 9 months old. And that kind of is what started my whole saga here. I love Colorado Springs. This has been my home for about 30 years. And although I've left a few times for college or other employment opportunities, I've always come home. And as I look towards the future, I think about having my own kids, and I want to make sure that Colorado Springs is not just a great place that I experienced growing up, but to make sure that Colorado Springs is an even better place to live for my kids and for future generations. And I believe that I have a fresh perspective and a lot of things to bring to the table to serve on city council. And the real inspiration for me running was I attended a few information sessions regarding some issues that were occurring around my house. And as we got to the end of these information sessions, there was a Q&A portion of it. And I felt kind of excluded from that because my questions never got answered. And they just kind of wrapped the meeting up. Okay, I guess we're done. And I'm still sitting there with my hand up. And unfortunately, I felt that I never really had a voice in those meetings. And that inspired me to look through the city's other plans and other things that were going on. And it kind of brought it to my attention that maybe my community's best interest wasn't being prioritized. And I felt that we could use a voice on city council. And that's really why I decided to run, to really bring our community a voice and a fresh perspective.
Okay. Are you currently employed?
I am. I own a real estate firm, Springs Preferred Realty. So I'm the managing broker for that firm. And I have an agent under me that I delegate to. But things are a little interesting right now, as you can imagine, in real estate. So I hope that I can split my time pretty easily between city council and those duties.
Sort of answers the next question. Since city council pays about $6,000 a year, one of the criticisms is it excludes people who have full-time jobs. They can't devote the time necessary. Is that a concern of yours at all?
It isn't. I've kind of been a workaholic historically, and this is actually, COVID has been probably the quietest time in the last decade of my employment. And so I'm always very able to handle a large workload and balance my time very effectively. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay. You are running for a seat in District 5. You mentioned not really being heard, especially at that meeting. Can you talk about what you think are the issues facing your district specifically?
Yeah, there's kind of some big issues going on. Zoning is definitely one of them. The downtown area is a fair chunk. It's not the entire district, but rezoning is one of those issues that could really affect the downtown area. And I want to make sure that the changes that we're making are appropriate and that have proper communal input from everybody involved that's going to be dealing with these changes. So zoning is definitely a big one. Public or traffic safety is definitely another one. I want to make sure that my citizens have safe roads. We've been seeing increased traffic deaths, especially on the Academy Boulevard corridor, and I definitely want to take that into consideration. A fair amount of people have brought that to my attention. And then a third one, and it kind of wraps into some of my other ideas for the city, but is our public transportation. My district is kind of unique in the fact that we have a handful of bus routes that really just go around my district and nothing directly through the district. I find that to be problematic in the city's long-term goals of really trying to incorporate public transit and promoting all of our citizens to use public transit. And it's incredibly hard to ride the bus if you're miles away from a bus stop. And so those are, I think, probably the biggest issues in my district.
Do you see separate issues that affect the city as a whole that you would like to address?
Sure. Again, some of these kind of go full circle and they don't just affect one district. But again, our infrastructure to include, the buses that I just discussed, I definitely want to take our infrastructure and our transportation methods, whether it's roads or public transport or multimodal transport, into consideration. And these are just some of my priorities too. In my campaign, public safety is another one. We're obviously facing a shortage of public safety officers, and so I definitely want to make sure that we have an appropriate amount of those individuals so that our city's a safe place. Um, and then the last thing that I am very well aware of is that we need to make sure that we are developing our economy, our local economy, in an effective way. And those are things that I definitely want to promote when I'm elected.
What measures would you take to assist small businesses that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure. I definitely want to advance the tax rebates, sales tax rebates for bars and restaurants. Make sure that continues, and to make sure that it's effective for businesses, and to reach out and to hear their opinion. The last thing we want to do is to do too little or too much and not actually have a proper impact. And then secondly, I definitely want to try and reduce some red tape for businesses to succeed. Again, bars and restaurants were some of the most hardest hit. I'd like to, loosen up restrictions to let them, have patio seating, maybe, for some places, do some parking lot type events, and really help promote their businesses. Seems like we're kind of on the tail end of the pandemic, I hope. And that I think we really need to put our best foot forward to making an impact to move towards the future. And this is kind of another idea that I had to also promote those businesses and to incorporate communal conversations and communication. I'm proposing that at least once a month, have a Meet Matt event. And we go around to, businesses that want to put themselves on the list, bars and restaurants. And I go out there for a few hours and I meet my constituents and we chat about issues that are bothering them. And that's really a win-win. It helps our businesses and it helps our citizens communicate directly with their representatives. And then lastly, I think there's a great way that we can help our businesses. And while I'm not for increasing the size of our government, at least temporarily, I think we should think about setting up a small sector that helps businesses get PPP loans and short-term loans, and help them navigate those channels, because there are funds available. At times, they're difficult to figure out how to get through those barriers and how to access these funds, and if they may be eligible. And I think if we can bring just a handful of individuals in to help coach businesses, it can make a significant long-term impact on them.
Okay. Regarding public health and the COVID dial and the work that the state has done, do you agree with the parameters that they've set for businesses? Do you think they should be loose, specifically public health, I guess? Should they be looser in the county, in the city, or do you think that the parameters are realistic?
It's hard to say. Not everybody's kind of treated fairly. We've kind of had some umbrella policies come from the state down. And we do have to adhere to those. Those are the rule, and we have to abide by those. But if we had the option to, I think businesses should be able to set their own parameters. And if you make a decision that you'd like to be a patron of that business and you don't feel comfortable, or you are comfortable with their safety protocols, then I think that's up to you. But like I said, these decisions really kind of come from the top down. And I think it's important to abide by the regulations and the rules and laws the state puts in place.
Do you think there's adequate protection for workers then if it's up to the business?
I do. And fortunately for us, PPE is not terribly expensive. You can buy a 99-cent mask. And I hope that moving forward politically, we can put our differences aside, especially for El Paso County, working with the state government to make sure and we prioritize individuals that are at high risk, teachers, restaurant staff, those individuals, and make sure that we are protecting them as much as we can.
Can you talk about how you would address the affordable housing crisis in the city?
Sure. being in real estate, this is something that's very close at heart for me. And there's a handful of things that really cause affordability and the crisis thereof. Um, the first, it was kind of a double whammy. Obviously, Colorado Springs was increasing popularity to move here, and we've seen a lot of people, pick up and move their whole business or their whole lives, things like that. So there's no doubt that we had increasing demand for real estate here. Unfortunately, concurrently with that demand, COVID really turned things upside down. And I don't know the exact numbers, but last year at this time, there were at least, between 1,000 and 1,500 homes for sale, or just properties in general, under the $600,000 or $700,000 mark. This year, we're looking at about 200. So we have about a 70 to 80% decrease in available properties. And basic economics tells us that as the supply dwindles and the demand stays the same or increases, there's no doubt that we're going to see price increases. And it's hard to say whether these are going to be long-term effects or if these are just short-term effects from the pandemic. And so I think we kind of need to have a little bit of restraint, not to overdo it and kind of have a knee-jerk reaction to really produce a huge amount of affordable housing, however that may be. But then there's another dichotomy as well between affordable housing and attainable housing. And then along the lines of affordable housing, in my opinion, I think that really is an index. Affordability is only based on what your income is. And so, while we definitely need to worry about the supply of housing in Colorado Springs, I think we also need to have an equal focus on our economic impact and making sure that we have well-paying jobs so that people can actually, pay rent and that aren't going to be paying 30, 40, 50, 60% of their monthly income on just their rent check. And so I think there's multiple components of it other than just purely increasing the supply, which I will agree, we absolutely need to continue to do that. And I think there's a few ways that we can make that happen. Obviously, we have a huge military presence here in Colorado Springs. I would like to see some cooperation with our military bases and maybe inspire them to create more on-base military housing so that we don't have such a huge demand from the military folks on our outside housing. And so there could be some cooperation there to make more housing available on base and on post, as well as, continuing public and private partnerships. There are a number of federal tax incentives. There's the low income housing tax credit, and that works for developers. They can save money on their personal income tax by participating in developments that contribute to affordable and low income housing. And I think we need to, as a city, we really need to help the developers navigate those channels so that they can get those funds and they can get those incentives so that we all benefit from it. And then lastly, I know that a couple developers around town have started to do what are called deed restrictions. And what that does is when you buy a new property from a builder, it basically forbids you from being able to sell that plot. And what that does is it really helps the working class have a fair shot at buying homes. It really deters investors from only buying those new builds that just want to hold it in the short term and make a profit later down the road. And it really helps, I think, to kind of limit the buying pool, and so that people that are working class do have an opportunity to purchase homes and to have attainable housing. So those are a few of my ideas, and I think we can tackle it as long as we're a little bit patient too.
Somewhat related, can you talk about the homelessness problem in the city and how you could address that?
Sure. Typically it doesn't seem that the city is really too interested in doing a whole lot. And again, I'm not a proponent of increasing the size of our government, but I think there's also room to add a couple individuals, and for homelessness, I think that we should address the true root cause. There's kind of two reasons and ways that people are homeless, either temporarily homeless or chronically homeless. And I'm not sure of the exact figures. I'm not sure anybody is. This data is extremely hard to come by. But I will say that there is probably a large portion of individuals that are homeless that either have mental health issues or they have substance abuse issues. And I strongly believe that we could bring in a handful of social workers and counselors and things of that nature to really get these individuals the help they need. But I look at that as the first of many steps. I don't think that's just enough as it is, because it's so easy to, fall back off the wagon and to get back in your own ways. I think we really need to kind of take a long-term approach to this and to help these individuals not only, get the help they need, but to actually reintegrate themselves back into society. And I think we can do that through, assistance of job placement and unemployment assistance. And maybe we even take it a step farther and allow these individuals to possibly even ride city buses for free so that they can get either from the shelter or temporary housing to work in an easy manner, and to really break the cycle. I think that's going to be the key. But saying all these things, I think it's also important not to overdo it. I am a little bit fearful that if we make too many contributions, that we take a counteractive approach and we actually increase the amount of homeless individuals, because we're an attractive city and there's a lot of support. So I think there needs to be a balance, but I also believe that we do need to take some action.
What are your feelings on legalizing recreational cannabis dispensaries in the city?
I believe it was back in 2012 when we voted for Amendment 64 to be passed. Our county, El Paso County, I think we cast somewhere around 280,000 votes. And in our county, it passed, but by a simple 10 vote. And so I don't believe that it is completely representative of how our county feels about it. And I don't feel that city council should really take a direct action to say yes or no. I believe that if the individuals that would like to see recreational marijuana come to Colorado Springs, that they do it through a signature collecting process and get it on the ballot.
Okay. In 2020, the city stood up the Law Enforcement Transparency and Accountability Commission, LETAC.
Sure.
Can you talk about your opinions regarding LETAC and anything that you might have done differently?
Sure. Obviously, the LETAC is really just getting their legs. They just, I think, had their first handful of meetings last fall. I've watched a few of them, and especially the more recent ones I've attended as well. I was a little bit disappointed to see that there is a lack of community attendance and input on these meetings. And so I'm not sure that if the word has really gotten out yet, that these committees are actually happening, which I think is a great thing. But I think that's going to be one of the challenges ahead, is to get community involvement with these committees to make sure that they are being represented. But furthermore, I think that these committees have kind of a duty to be an outside, neutral, third-party agency in a way to address the facts of whatever situations happen and present the facts in a neutral manner to the community so that we are aware of what actually happened, and that there isn't a self-invested investigation like the police investigating themselves. Obviously we can imagine why that wouldn't be the best thing, and that has kind of been historically done. And so I believe the LETAC should definitely present the community with the facts of the case. But as far as recommending future action or potential consequences to officers involved, our legal system is quite robust, and I don't think that they really need or have the power or should have the power to do that. Again, I believe that their function should truly just be to inform the community as to the facts and let them know in a clear and concise manner what happened.
One criticism of city council and I guess employment within the city too, is that it's not very representative of the demographics of the city as a whole. How do you make city government and city employment more diverse and representative?
Sure. I guess we can start from city council down. We don't have a ton of diversity right now, and I think it's hard, as you brought up in the beginning of this conversation, to live off of $6,250 a year. That's gas money, I think, to get to City Hall for most of us. And I don't think that we really need to be paid a fat salary, but I think having a competitive wage so that you could live off of it is something that we need to do. I think to at least, I think it's kind of obvious that city council is a full-time job at this point. At 40 hours a week, I think we should at least make the minimum wage. I think that would be a fair starting point. So, it's maybe somewhere between 25 or 25,000 and 30,000 would be somewhere to start. So I think that'd be a good starting place. And then, in the city as a whole, I know that some cities have taken action during their hiring process. And I think we need to explore that if we haven't already done it. I'm not perfectly familiar with the HR system for the city. But my previous job experiences when we've been hiring individuals, they'll block names out, they'll block addresses out, so there isn't an opportunity for discrimination to happen just by looking at a piece of paper. And so these are the types of policies that I'd really like to see happen in our city government, and to take it another step farther, to not just weigh so much on your educational experience. So do you have a college degree? Do you have a master's degree? But weigh in equally between individuals their job experience and their educational experience. Not everybody has the opportunity to go to college, and I think big corporations, Google, Tesla, they both recognize that you can get very well-rounded and smart candidates for jobs that don't have a degree because they may not have felt that they really needed one. And so I hate to exclude anybody that could be a very valuable individual working in our city government just because they don't have certain qualifications. So again, I think we need to balance educational and job experience when we're hiring individuals in the city government. And then lastly, I think we also need to really start branching out and potentially offering some internship possibilities with local schools, getting high school juniors and seniors involved with our city government. And I think that could perpetuate in a good way throughout schools and throughout our community.
Interesting. If you are elected to city council, you're also going to be wearing the hat of Colorado Springs Utilities board member. How comfortable are you with your duties at CSU if you're elected?
Sure, incredibly comfortable. In previous jobs, I had the pleasure to work at the U.S. Department of Energy at Sandia National Labs. And I have a background in science and engineering, and I speak the language that CSU speaks. I understand, rates and usage and all of the sorts of technicalities that are involved with utilities. And actually, I'm quite excited to work with CSU. I think they're doing some great things. I think they have a lot of innovative and forward thinking and ideas. And I'm excited to hopefully be a part of those things.
What's your approach to collaboration with those that you don't necessarily agree with?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, right? Trying to find that common ground. I believe that if you're going to come into a meeting with people that you know that you won't agree with, that you don't bring an agenda, you just bring ideas, and that you start brainstorming in that regard, and that you have to start listening to all sides and to think objectively, and to quantify the problem and to come up with solutions as a whole, and to kind of leave, your opinions and things at the door, and really address the problem as it be, and see how we can all come together to make a decision that's thoughtful and that fits everybody.
Can you tell us about a mistake that you've made and what you did to correct it?
Yeah, one mistake I made, and it was actually working at the Department of Energy Sandia Labs. I was working with some high voltage equipment, and honestly, I got a little bit careless, and I got a little bit complacent with some of my activities, and I got used to doing the same thing in repetition, and I almost electrocuted myself. And that was a very scary experience. And when you take a big electric shock, you don't necessarily know the outcome or the effects of that for a few days. And so I had a few days to kind of sit on that and resonate on it, and wonder if I'm going to be okay from all this. But when it comes to a close call like that, I think it really wakes you up. it reminds you to never lose focus, and to make sure that you are never complacent with what you do. You're always paying attention, and that you're always making sure you're making the right decisions.
How do you see that lesson translating to an elected position?
Yeah, same thing. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure that I will make a mistake here or there along the way, and I want to be accountable. That's kind of part of my whole platform is accountability, and to identify places where maybe I wasn't right, and to build off of that, and to learn from my mistakes, and to never make the same mistake twice. I think is a huge lesson to learn, and to keep in mind for doing anything.
Yeah. Sort of the flip side. What's your proudest achievement?
It's a good question too. um,
Not getting electrocuted might be up there.
yeah, that's definitely a huge plus. Not dying. Um, back in my early 20s, something that comes to mind. I was living in the foothills of the mountains, and there was a first big, widespread wildfire. And I had just finished college. I was hanging out, and my house burnt down. I lost everything I had. And at the same time, I had actually just been recently laid off too. And so I didn't really have anything. I was sleeping in a friend's living room on the floor with a blanket and my dog. And that was all that I had. And I think my proudest moment is being able to really pick myself up from kind of having nothing and restarting myself, and brushing the dust off my shoulders, and turning it around into getting back on my feet and making some serious progress in my life, and not just getting down in the dumps about that, and again making progress, and turning the corner, and quite proud to do that. And I've done a lot between that point in time and today, and I feel like that I've accomplished a lot in those last 10 or so years, and for that I'm very grateful and proud of that.
Okay. Did you say where you're from originally? Did you say you're from Colorado?
I grew up here.
Okay.
My parents relocated us when I was about 9 months old, so been here for a while.
Where were you originally from?
I was born in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Okay. But you've been here since less than 1 year old?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You're in a pretty crowded district as far as competition goes. There's, I think, 5 of you,
Sure.
and none are incumbents. You're all brand new. What makes you most qualified for the seat?
Sure. And I'm actually glad to see that we have a lot of individuals. Makes me happy to see that there's a lot of people that are kind of have the same mindset that I do, that we all want to see change, and that there's a diverse set of candidates. But I believe that through my education at the University of Colorado, my job experience, again, I worked for a biotech company for a while, then I worked for the Department of Energy for a while, and then I totally changed gears, and I did a lot of housing rehabilitation and renovations, and very obviously involved with real estate. I feel that I have a very well-rounded background, and that I have a lot of job experience and life experience that translates very well to city council. And through those actions, I think, again, I am hopefully the most eligible individual, and I can bring the most to the table and make a significant positive impact on city council.
Matthew, what do you do for fun?
I like to enjoy the outdoors. I love to hike and bike and ski. I like to walk my dog. Um, just typical Colorado lifestyle type things.
Yep. Any parting thoughts before we let you go?
Not that I can think of. I think we covered it all. Again, my priorities are infrastructure. I definitely want to make sure that our roads are safe and efficient. I'm not sure that I was able to mention this, but I want to introduce the use of more modern technology to reduce traffic congestion today. And we can also use that same technology to increase safety on our roads, which again is a huge issue in our town. We have a lot of traffic deaths, and I think that's very frightening. And again, I want to increase our number of public safety officials and officers in town. And I want to diversify those individuals so that we can be much more well-rounded and able to really treat our citizens and the issues that come up in the most effective manner while keeping our public officials safe. And then again, I want to make sure that our economy is well on its way and that we have a diverse economic portfolio, and that we are bringing in new sectors and new jobs into Colorado Springs, and that we don't just focus too much on one area, whether it's the military or Amazon, and that we're hoping to lead the way for Colorado Springs into the future, and that we're an attractive place to live and to bring your business. But not only that, to make sure that we demonstrate to the rest of our country and to the world that we have a future and we have a plan and we can execute it.
Let me follow up on just one of those. You did talk about infrastructure. I'm wondering if you supported 2C, to help fix up some of the problems that are around the city, and if you would support ongoing sales tax increases to help pay for those infrastructure projects. How would you go about that?
Sure. While I'm quite fiscally conservative, we actually have, and all politics aside, the only ballot measure that we have other than selecting your city council member will be to increase, or I guess eliminate, the restriction on the amount of words on future ballot measures. Right. And I think that's really going to be key for our city's success, is to increase the transparency in taxation so that we know exactly where funds are being used. There's no slush funds that are taking place, and that more importantly, not just where our funds can be spent, but where they can't be spent. And so I think that there is a function of city government that only city government can do. Taxes are obviously a necessary requirement so that we have these things, infrastructure, roads, schools. We as citizens and individuals, we can't do those. And I think it's important to make sure that our roads are in good shape. And so I do support continuing those actions, and to make sure that we're on the right track to really clean up our road system and make it a safer road system as well.
Okay. Anything else? I know I had a follow-up, so any other closing thoughts?
I think that's it. I appreciate your time.
That's it? Okay. So the Independent will be coming out with its endorsements in our March 10th issue, so keep an eye out for that.
Sure.
And we wish you the best of luck in the election.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye-bye.